By the end of this video, you'll have witnessed 118 years of dynasty. Every coronation, every betrayal, every decision that transformed England from a medieval kingdom into a Renaissance power. We're covering every Tudor monarch, from Henry VII, who seized the throne in battle, to Elizabeth I, who ruled without a husband. Using the latest AI technology, we'll show you what these monarchs and events actually looked like. We begin with Henry VII, the Welsh nobleman who won England's crown at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, ending 30 years of civil war. From the break with Rome to the Spanish Armada, this is the complete story of the Tudor dynasty. On August 22, 1485, Henry Tudor faced King Richard III at Bosworth Field. Henry had spent 14 years in exile. He had no real claim to the throne. But Richard was hated by many nobles. The battle lasted just 2 hours. When Richard's crown was found on the battlefield, it was placed on Henry's head. At 28 years old, Henry Tudor became King Henry VII. Henry knew his position was weak. To unite the warring houses of York and Lancaster, he married Elizabeth of York in January 1486. Their marriage created the Tudor rose, red and white petals combined, but threats remained. Lambert Simnel said he was Edward, Earl of Warwick. Perkin Warbeck claimed to be Richard, Duke of York. Henry defeated both, but the challenges showed how fragile his crown was. Henry VII was not a warrior king. He was a calculator. He rebuilt England's finances through careful taxation and trade agreements. He avoided expensive wars. His eldest son, Arthur, married Catherine of Aragon, uniting England and Spain. But Arthur died at 15. Henry's second son would inherit everything.
Henry VII died on April 21st, 1509, at age 52. He had ruled for 24 years.
When he took the throne, England was bankrupt and divided. When he died, the treasury was full and the kingdom was stable. He left his crown to his 17-year-old son, Henry. When Henry VIII became king in 1509, England celebrated. He was everything his father wasn't: tall, athletic, charismatic. He jousted, he hunted, he wrote music. He was called the handsomest prince in Christendom. 6 weeks after becoming king, Henry married Catherine of Aragon, his brother's widow. She was 23, he was 17. They seemed perfect together. But after 20 years of marriage, Catherine had given Henry only one living child, a daughter, Mary. Henry needed a son. England had never been successfully ruled by a queen. By 1527, Henry had fallen in love with Anne Boleyn. He wanted to annul his marriage to Catherine. He asked Pope Clement VII for permission. The Pope refused. What happened next changed England forever. If the Pope wouldn't grant an annulment, Henry would break from the Pope entirely. In 1534, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy. Henry became supreme head of the Church of England. He dissolved the monasteries, seizing their lands and wealth. He destroyed ancient abbeys and expelled the monks. Henry married Anne Boleyn in secret in 1533. Anne gave him a daughter named Elizabeth. Henry was furious. In 1536, Anne was accused of adultery and treason. She was beheaded. Just 11 days later, Henry married Jane Seymour. In 1537, Jane gave Henry what he wanted most, a son, Edward. But Jane died 12 days after childbirth. Henry is said to have genuinely mourned her. In 1540, Henry married Anne of Cleves. He called her the Flanders Mare. The marriage was annulled after 6 months. Later that year, Henry married the young Catherine Howard. In 1542, Catherine was accused of adultery. She was beheaded. Henry's final wife was Catherine Parr in 1543. Catherine outlived Henry, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. As Henry aged, he became monstrous. His athletic body turned obese. His waist reached 137 centimeters. His leg ulcers never healed. He became paranoid and cruel. Henry VIII died on January 28, 1547, at age 55. He had ruled for 38 years. He broke England from Rome, executed 2 wives, and left 3 children who would each inherit the throne. England would never be the same. Edward was 9 years old when his father died. Despite being small, he was a serious and studious child. He had been raised to believe he was chosen by God, but he was still a child. Real power at the time lay with his uncle, Edward Seymour. Edward VI was a devout Protestant. Under his reign, England moved rapidly away from Catholicism. Latin services were replaced with English services. Priests were allowed to marry. Images of saints were destroyed. The Book of Common Prayer, written by Thomas Cranmer, became the foundation of Protestant worship. For the first time, ordinary people could understand church services. However, religious change led to rebellions. In 1549, the Prayer Book Rebellion and Kett's Rebellion challenged the new order. Both were violently suppressed. In 1549, Somerset fell from power. John Dudley seized control. Edward was still too young to rule alone. By 1553, it was clear Edward was on his deathbed. He had tuberculosis. He was coughing blood. He couldn't eat. Edward knew that if he died, the crown would pass to his Catholic half-sister Mary. He didn't want that at all. Northumberland convinced Edward to change the succession, and the throne would pass to Lady Jane Grey, a Protestant. Edward VI died on July 6, 1553, at just 15 years old. Lady Jane Grey was 16 when she was proclaimed queen. She never wanted to be queen. Then Mary marched on London and had Jane arrested. In 1554, she was beheaded. She had reigned for only 9 days. Mary was 37 years old when she became queen, widely known by most as Bloody Mary. She had spent years humiliated and threatened. Her mother, Catherine of Aragon, had been cast aside. Despite being declared illegitimate, the people supported her. Mary's mission was to restore England to Catholicism. She reversed Edward's Protestant reforms, returning to Latin services. Papal authority was recognized once more. In 1554, Mary married Philip II of Spain, the most powerful Catholic king in Europe, sending shockwaves through England. Parliament begged Mary not to marry. She ignored them entirely. They feared nothing less than Spanish control over England. Mary believed she had to save England's soul. In her eyes, those who refused to return to Catholicism were heretics, and heretics burned. Over 4 years, nearly 300 Protestants were burned at the stake, including Thomas Cranmer. Mary was desperate for an heir. She announced pregnancies. Her belly swelled. The court prepared for a royal birth. But there was no baby. It was a phantom pregnancy. Meanwhile, England lost Calais, its last possession in France. It was a national humiliation. Mary grew sick, and her husband Philip spent no time with her. She spent almost all of her time feeling alone and desperate. Mary I died on November 17, 1558, at the age of 42. She had ruled for 5 years. She died knowing that her Protestant half-sister Elizabeth would inherit the throne. Everything Mary had fought for would come to nothing. Elizabeth was 25 years old when she was crowned, and by that age she had survived many dangers. At one point, Mary had imprisoned her in the Tower of London. Now, Elizabeth was queen. A magnificent coronation took place in January 1559. When asked about marriage, she said, "I am already bound unto a husband, which is the kingdom of England." Elizabeth inherited a religiously divided nation. She chose a middle way. The Elizabethan religious settlement brought relative peace. For decades, European kings proposed marriage to her. Elizabeth refused them all. Her closest relationship was with Robert Dudley. Rumors swirled, but Elizabeth never married him either. She became known as the Virgin Queen. In 1588, King Philip II of Spain sent the Invincible Armada to invade England. 130 ships and 30,000 men. Elizabeth rode to Tilbury in armor to address her troops.
"I know I have the body of a weak, feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too."
And with those words, she inspired her soldiers. The Armada was defeated. It was England's greatest triumph. Elizabeth's reign is remembered as a golden age. William Shakespeare wrote his plays. Francis Drake circumnavigated the globe. England became a cultural and naval power. But Elizabeth aged. Her face was painted white with lead makeup to hide her wrinkles. Her teeth were black. Her red wig covered her thinning hair. Elizabeth I died on March 24th, 1603. She was 69 years old. She had ruled for 45 years. She had no children, and having refused to name an heir, the Tudor dynasty died with her. The crown passed to James Stuart. The Tudors ruled England for 118 years, from 1485 to 1603. They transformed England from a medieval kingdom torn apart by civil war into a Renaissance power that challenged empires. They broke from Rome. They survived religious wars and rebellions. They defeated the Spanish Armada. But the dynasty founded by Henry VII at Bosworth Field ended without a single Tudor heir remaining. 5 monarchs, 118 years. England was never the same again. This was the Tudor dynasty from beginning to end. If you love history, you can support me by subscribing to my channel using the button appearing on screen. And you can watch my video where I explain all the Roman emperors in 13 minutes right now.